This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, the International Monetary Fund has warned Cyprus over its inflated public sector wage bill.
You really have to look at both sides of the coin, what you pay and what you get for what you pay. And that's where the comparison really is striking, I would say, in the sense that there's definitely, we're paying quite a bit, and there's definitely a strong sense that we're not really getting our money's worth in terms of the quality of public services we're seeking.
And Becky's button will empower women across the globe.
It emits 125 decibels sound. You can wear it somewhere on your body. It is rechargeable, and the idea is that the wearer knows he or she has it, and they press it and they run. But also the attacker is surprised, and it gives them a few vital seconds.
The International Monetary Fund has warned that Cyprus is overinflated in terms of our public wage bill. Now, this is something that's been going on for many years. It got a little bit better during the haircut and the consequent things that were done to try and bring Cyprus finances back on track, but it looks like we're going down the same old slippery slope again. I'm joined on this week's programme by the Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Management at the University of Cyprus. He is Professor Sophronis Kleridis. Sophronis, many thanks for joining me. Can you give us a little bit of background first? Because, as I've just said, this has happened before, but we just seem to be making the same mistakes again.
Yes, indeed. Public finances were a big issue during the financial crisis that culminated in the infamous haircut in 2013. The wage bill of Cyprus, the public wage bill, is large relative to other countries. Has always historically been a source of worry, and we did quite a bit to improve the situation after the crisis. But in the last few years, things seems to be returning a little bit to where they were before, in the sense that in the last couple of years we had a couple of small gifts, let's just call them, from the government to the public sector employees. One was the increase of the ATA, the wage indexation, from 50% to 2/3. Another one was the increase in the base salary that was announced about last year, which was a bit of a surprise. Nobody really expected that one. And there's definitely a sense that public sector wage bill is beginning to get large again. Now, I should be clear that we are very far from where we are before the crisis, but it's a direction that's mostly of concern right now, because a lot of these changes are also cumulative. They are not one-off, right? So the increase in the base salary, it's cumulative. The increases due to wage indexation, accumulate. So this means that over the years, this thing is going to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, I think I read that our public sector wages in Cyprus are estimated to be about 27% higher than in the private sector, and they make up something like 12% of the island's GDP. That is surely unsustainable.
Well, let me just say first that it's hard to say what the optimal public wage bill is. So what do? We do some comparisons with other reference points just to get an idea. So one comparison is the last number you mentioned is, what is the public sector wage bill in other countries, okay? And you compare it with them. And for Cyprus, this number is a bit on the high side, but really to be correct, but it's not exceedingly high, right? But really, to do a proper analysis, you should really do a cost-benefit analysis. So, maybe if our public sector wage bill is high, but we get high-quality public services, then that might be perfectly fine.
But we don't.
So,
That's the problem, isn't it? I mean, they also said
exactly.
in this report that the unconditional nature of salary increases lacks a mechanism to incentivize better performance. So it's not just the lack of productivity, it also surely boils down to how many public sector workers we have, and we've seen the government employing more recently.
Yeah, so that's exactly my point. You really have to look at both sides of the coin, what you pay and what do you get for what you pay. And that's where the comparison really is striking, I would say, in the sense that there's definitely, we are paying quite a bit, and there's definitely a strong sense that we're not really getting our money's worth in terms of the quality of the public services we receive. So that's the one valid comparison one can make. The second issue, that the second number you mentioned earlier, the 27%, that's a comparison between equivalent people with equivalent credentials, qualifications, and so forth in the public versus private sector. So, on average, the same person makes 27% more in the public than in the private sector. So that's a very big difference. We're way off the charts comparing to comparison to other countries. And the reason, and this is especially high. Also, it's useful to see which range, which type of employee that you see this more, and it's mostly in the middle layers. So the bottom, the low-paid public sector employees make more than the private sector, but not as much as 27%.
Yeah, but the problem as well, surely, sorry to interrupt, Sophronis, the problem as well, surely, is that the way that people move up the scale in the public sector, it's all to do with how long they've been in the job and whether or not they have a degree or whatever, but it's got nothing to do with productivity and their performance, has it?
Absolutely, yes. Let me get to that in a second. So also people in high level, top managerial positions in the public sector actually are not paid as much more as the people in the middle. So it's the people in the middle of the ranks basically who really get paid more than the private sector. And the reason is exactly what you said. Basically, you have all these automatic raises in the base salary, raises due to moving up the scale, and raises due to wage indexation. And these are all automatic. Two of the three are automatic. The changes in the base salary negotiated, and everybody gets them regardless of performance. So that's really the main problem, and that's one of the things that this report highlights.
And it's one of the things that people have been pressuring the government for years to address in terms of assessment of the performance of civil servants. And it seems that every single time this comes up, the unions of the relevant workers in the civil service scream and shout and stamp their feet, and the government backs off.
Well, it's happening right now. That's actually, you probably know, the government has come up with a plan for performance appraisal for educators, school teachers. So the union is disagreeing, and there was actually a vote a few days ago by the union members, and I think they rejected the government's plan by a vote of 90+% against it. So what will happen? It's hard to be very optimistic that this will go through, given this strong reaction from the union. But we have to wait and see.
Well, I think we've waited and seen how many times in the past. I'm not holding out much hope. Do you think that we need to completely rethink who is in charge of government finances? We have our finance ministry. They don't seem to be able to do very much about this, as I say, because as soon as the unions start shouting, everybody goes quietly back to their offices.
Well, that's the way it is. I don't know who else could be doing that. That's the finance ministry. It's their job. The question is whether we will ever have a government that will stand its ground when faced with this kind of opposition.
Especially when we have elections coming up every 2, 3, 4 years, depending on whether it's for the presidency or the municipalities or indeed the parliament. So there's no hope, is there? I mean, if we carry on like this, are we going to have another haircut?
No, I wouldn't go that far. But I think now there are a few more external constraints that will not let us get to that point. I don't think. But the point is that it's inefficient. It's a waste of resources. It's unfair. It's unfair to a society which is paying for this public sector which is not delivering the goods. It's unfair for those public sector employees who actually work hard and are productive, and they don't get fairly compensated, and then see other people who don't work hard and are not productive get the same increases that they do, and they maybe even get more promotions because they are well connected. There's a lot of issues here, so it's not a matter of, it doesn't have to go to the extreme of a haircut to say that this is a problem.
But it is a problem that I think is recognised by everybody, isn't it? Many thanks for your insights into this problem, and it is a problem. We've been talking to Sofronis Clearidis, Dean of the Faculty of Economics and Management at the University of Cyprus. Sofronis, thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
We're going to talk now about Becky's Button. It's a project that's the brainchild of my next guest, and it's very much to do with empowering women. Jane Hung is determined to transform her grief at losing her child into action. So Jane, a warm welcome to the Cyprus News Digest, and will you just, if you like, put us in the picture as to how this all came about?
Thank you very much, Rosie, for having me on this programme. And I really look forward to telling our listeners something about Becky's Button, because, yes, Becky's Button was born from a personal tragedy. Becky wasn't a child, she was an adult, but she lost her life to rape and murder aged 30 in Lebanon. She was a humanitarian worker, working on humanitarian projects in the British Embassy, and she took a taxi for her own safety back home one night and didn't emerge.
That's a terrible thing to have to deal with, I think, Jane, but you've turned it into something positive. So tell us about the idea behind Becky's Button, because let's face it, women across the globe are very vulnerable, and it seems to me getting more so these days.
I think you're right, Rosie. I know you're right. The figures just keep going up. And I'm not going to bore people with statistics, but gender-based violence, and more particularly sexual and gender-based violence, which is what my charity focuses on, is increasing, mainly at the moment due to online sexual harassment. But of course, there's the good old, femicide, a man killing a woman. There's intimate partner violence, mostly domestic violence. And then there's sexual harassment at work.
But your daughter, Becky, it was seemingly a random attack, because those are also very difficult to deal with. Nobody knows when they're going to happen next.
It was extremely unusual. I now have many close friends in Lebanon. I've been numerous times since Becky was killed in December 2017. Everybody knows the case. Probably like Cyprus, it's a very family-oriented society, and this was just so unusual. Not only because, the driver was a stranger, a complete stranger, but also Becky was white and she was working for the government.
What are you hoping will be the outcome of Becky's button? Because you work in many different countries, don't you? And I want to know how in those different countries it's been received.
All right. So, frankly, I just dream about Becky and Becky's story. It was particularly tragic, being something that moves people emotionally, that moves government officials, moves the police, moves the lawyers, anybody who really could make a difference to decrease the amount of gender-based violence going on in the world. When Becky was killed in 2017, there were 83,000 cases somewhere on the planet. And that's just femicide, that doesn't include the domestic violence. So it's a tragedy. And I just had this hunch, Rosie, very early on, within a week, and maybe it's fairly normal for a parent to think, what if she'd done this? What if that had happened? But one of the things that came crystal clear to me is that if only she'd been wearing some kind of panic button. And I won't go into the ghastly details about what actually happened, but I think it could have saved her life. Something like this. And Becky's button is very simple. It emits 125 decibel sound, which is about as loud as we can make it for legal reasons. You can wear it somewhere on your body. It is rechargeable. And the idea is that the wearer knows he or she has it, and they press it and they run. Ideally, they report, but also the attacker is surprised, and it gives them a few vital seconds. Now, panic buttons are well known with police, with politicians, with frontline workers, nurses, and all these people that might suffer some kind of abuse. Now it's very commonplace that panic buttons are used. There are tens of them on the market. But I believe that, Becky's button is something special. Well, of course, it's special to me because it's got my daughter's name in it.
Is it similar to other panic buttons, or is there a vital difference?
Well, it's simpler. It has very limited functionality. And that is mainly because when I designed the first model, that was in 2021, I've been doing this project since then. I was working in a charity actually called Becky's Bathhouse in Greece, and we were offering hot showers and laundry services to refugees, and they were all living in camps. And the idea was to manufacture a product and do the training and actually collect data from there. Interestingly, in refugee camps, people are living cheek by jowl, and they're all looking out for each other. There are many different sort of organisations and people and types. So within a month, we had a report that I think she was a Nepalese woman. She was walking to the bathroom late at night, and 4 men came upon her, tried to drag her in some bushes, and she had a Becky's button and she pressed it, and it averted what probably would have been a gang rape.
So it's obviously something that a lot of people would like to have. We'll come before we finish to where people can get one, but what about the cost? You're a charity and you give this out, I think, for free. First of all, where do you get the funding from, and are these things expensive?
All right. They are not. A lot of the ones that you see on the market, if you go on Amazon, you can see tens of them. I know the cost of manufacturing now. All those products that you see on the market are commercial. We at Becky's Button, we're a UK registered charity. We oppose the commercialisation of women's safety. We believe that safety is a women's right. And so, look, we've distributed 7,500. We are a charity. We do get support, and whatever happens going forward, I want to distribute more for free to the most vulnerable. Having said that, interestingly, there's a kind of shifting landscape now. We get hundreds of people writing. I did some media, had some media exposure in the UK late last year, and we got hundreds of people saying, where can I buy Becky's button? I just want to buy Becky's button. And we had calls from older people sort of saying, we want one, or we'd like to buy for our granddaughter or whatever. So we are looking to develop a generation 2. The device will be redesigned. It will be simpler, and it will probably be cheaper. And we're going to use a cross-subsidization model. So it will be available commercially, but any profit that we get, it will be used to fund free distributions for people most in need.
What sort of changes have you decided that you need to make to this in your Mark II?
Oh,
well, it's fascinating to see how these things develop, because I presume that you've had feedback about possibly things that could have been better, and maybe this Mark II will make them better.
Well, if you don't mind, Rosie, I won't reveal that right now because we're still very much in the planning stage. But there's nothing like it on the market, put it that way.
Okay, but it will still be a reasonable expense for people. I mean, how much, if I want to buy one, how much am I going to pay? Mark I.
That's really hard to say. But look, let's just say a figure, maybe $2. But
oh, really? So you're talking pocket money.
Hopefully, I think almost certainly we will be able to do that. And we will encourage people who can go online and buy one to actually maybe buy 10. And then they know that 9 of them are being distributed anywhere around the world. You know, this is a global initiative. We truly want to prevent sexual and gender-based violence all over. And we want this to be a movement.
So let's talk about some of the countries where you have already introduced this, and what do women there think?
Okay, I started in Lebanon, and we went to refugee camps mainly, and that the link was Greece. We'd been distributing in Greece. So we also distributed, we did some workshops at schools and universities where we're in the developing country like Lebanon, you're raising awareness about GBV. And the general response we got, especially with the adults, let's say, was that they found it very empowering, especially on their daily life, for example, going shopping. And going to visit their friend. So on the street, it was very useful. The general comment was that the women found it very empowering, and most of them wanted another one for their daughters or even their sons. So yeah, the demand was big, and we could only distribute a certain number, but it gave us a good idea about, for a country like Lebanon, why this device is very useful. In Jordan, we've also done workshops in Jordan, so very, very similar, actually, empowering. And then most recently, we've done some work in Pakistan, and for that, we are working more with young people, university students. We like to work with volunteers who are at the universities who can tell their friends and spread the word, and then we come along and do a workshop. We're hoping to do one in Cyprus, actually, as part of the 16 Days of Activism this year, you know, the UN Women's Initiative. Yep, the plan is to come to a university or a secondary school with one of our student interns from the UK and talk about gender-based violence, how we can prevent it, and give them some Becky's buttons, and ideally sign a pledge which says we oppose GBV in any form.
It looks tiny from the pictures I see on your website, and I think back to when women had to maybe use pepper spray or something if they were in neighbourhoods where they felt unsafe. This looks literally tiny to fit in a pocket, somewhere where you can get at it really quickly and just press the button and it starts emitting this sound for, I think, an hour and a half.
That's exactly right. Now, I'm just measuring it as we speak. It's 2 inches long, and it is about 1.5 inches wide. It's very light. It's recyclable plastic, and it's interesting. Certain journalists have picked up that it is the smallest product on the market. I'm not quite sure I haven't done my research, but it's designed as a wearable. You can put it in your pocket, you can clip it on your body or even your handbag. You can hang it on a key ring or around your neck. So we've given wearers an option, but the general idea is that the wearer knows they have it and other people don't.
All of this information, I think, is available on your website, beckysbutton.org. Anything else you want to say before we wrap this up, Jane? Because obviously it's something that's very close to your heart.
It is indeed. It would be wonderful if people could also check us out on Instagram. It's Becky's Button, one word, and that's where we update our news regularly. We have photos, we have captions. So we want to build awareness, especially with younger generations, because so many young people feel so strongly about this. And my appeal to the younger generations are, do you want to live in a society where the rates are just continuing to climb like they are now? If not, what can we do together to brainstorm and come up with some kind of strategies? And I mean, the reality is we're looking for a cultural shift in many countries and some kind of gender equality. But let's get the young men in this conversation as well as the young women.
That's interesting. I was going to ask you about whether or not any men come to your workshops, because it can't really succeed, can it, unless we change the mindset of the male population.
I had that hunch very early on, and we encourage young men to come, men of any age, but I'm talking about young men because, again, if we get them in the university and they're in a campus, not only do those young people create the safety within that enclosed area, but also they go home and they tell their friends. So the idea is that through dialogue, it's a very sensitive area, and a lot of people are reluctant to speak out. But I like to think very humbly that we're having some success by not being aggressive, not challenging the opposite sex, but just appealing to their sensibility. I mean, and I start right at the beginning by saying, if I'm talking directly to men, is, well, look, imagine if Becky had been your girlfriend. How would you feel if she'd been your daughter? So I like to think that slowly, we will make an impact if I continue this work, which I am.
Yeah, you're obviously very determined, and that's required when you run a charity. I know that. So it's basically something that I guess you're hoping if every man knew every woman had one, then again, the deterrent factor would possibly kick in very fast.
Who knows? We talk about bystander behaviour to the men in the audience. Appeal again to their common sense and their good heart. I believe we all have good heart somewhere. And yes, we're collecting data. I'm very interested to see how this will play out, as it were. Waiting for more data. We're getting smarter at data collection now. And who knows?
Well, that is a telling tale and one that we wish every success. Jane Hung, who is the founder and who runs Becky's Button, empowering women across the globe and raising awareness about gender-based violence and sexual harassment. Jane, the very best of luck, and as I say, definitely we must meet up if you do ever come to Cyprus. Many thanks for joining me.
Many thanks indeed, Rosie, for this time.
Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.